Music theory with Microsoft Excel. Auto-transposable music system through all 12 collections of 7 notes, also automatically rotatable to all 7 modal perspectives, changing the tonic upon rotation. Part number 10. So get ready and some coffee, because you ain't never seen rockin' unless you excel at rockin', for which you need Microsoft Excel. In Excel! If you don't have access to this workbook, that's okay, because we basically built this from a blank worksheet but started in a prior presentation. So if you want to build this entire worksheet from a blank sheet, you could begin back there or just follow along building the part of the worksheet that we're currently working on. If you do have access to this workbook, though, 4 tabs down below, including the very colorful fretboard tab, we may refer to the example tab, in essence the answer key, practice tab having pre-formatted cells so you can practice the practice problem with less Excel formatting. But if you do not have any of that, that is okay. We will continue to work in the blank tab where we started from scratch with a blank worksheet. We'll be continuing in essence in the blank part of the worksheet, practicing not only our music skills but our Excel formatting skills as well, for formatting's sake. Let's go to the start of the worksheet to get a reminder of our objective and see what we have done thus far so we can map out what we're going to do from here. So we want to create a system that we can jot down our musical ideas, our notes, our melodies in a way as efficiently as possible, even if doing it by a paper and pencil, so that we can easily transpose that information to all 12 collections of 7 notes without having to write much more to do the transposition, and possibly allow the rotation to all 7 modal perspectives, changing the tonic as we do so. This being something that I believe future MIDI systems and DAW systems will be able to do automatically if we were just to show the system the relative perspective, so that it can then have the 2 dials necessary to do the rotations through all 12 perspectives, as well as rotating through the modal perspectives. So we started off with the MIDI numbering system for an absolute numbering system that takes into account octaves. We then looked at a numbering system for human beings, which is still useful to have, for crying out loud, for the numbers 1 through 12 for the local numbering system. We have a numbering system for the collection of notes, which is like the Nashville number system, naming the modal points. That then allowing us to give that perspective, noting that we could still name all 12 notes from that perspective, but if we have the relative perspective laid out, that gives us our dial that we can then turn, automatically shifting. And then we have our chords, which we should be able to represent in a DAW system rather than just having to stack notes. As well as in sheet music, the tablature is actually more sophisticated in that way, in that you can actually write out chords, which is useful. So it would be nice to at least be able to write all normal chords using all collections of the 7 notes typical to a normal 7-note collection, doing so at least with the bass note in the lowest position, possibly then adding inversions. And instead of writing chords where we're going to name the note, we can convert them or write them, even better, in such a way that we do not refer to the note but to the modal point, making those chords universally applicable, automatically transposable to all 12 collections of 7 notes. Doing that then also allows us to name the chord by the nodal perspective, the Nashville number. Like a 4-6-1 chord is the major chord, or in this case, the Phrygian chord, right? Because it's going to start on the Phrygian, and then it's going to go to the Aeolian and the Ionian, are the 3 notes within it. We then mapped out all of our collections of notes, 12 collections of notes, but from the perspective of the relative perspective, which can be mapped out with the formula of whole number to whole, whole, half, whole, 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 and then half back to home. The 0.5s representing those notes that are outside of the collection of notes. We then said, okay, let's go to our actual kind of our data input for like our sheet music, which might be the interface of the DAW in its most simplified format. Instead of stacking all notes together, having one row representing all of the notes within an octave that we're currently working in. If that happens to be C major, the lowest note in this row will be C, going 12 notes up from there. If I'm in D Dorian, the lowest note will be D, going 12 notes up from there, allowing us to then map out both chords, which will have the lowest note in the chord in the 12-note progression, and possibly reach out to the upper octave for the other notes in the chord, and or allow us to write the notes in either Nashville number format, which I think would actually be easier for people that don't understand music because there's only 7 numbers and you can write them out, or you can write them in normal format here. But if you do that, we would like the system to automatically transpose the information, removing all the note names, representing the information by relative nodal perspective. Why? Because then it's all transposable. Now, I just want to point out that you might have part of the song that you're visualizing in one mode versus another mode. So I think from a MIDI system or a DAW system, you should be able to designate whatever part of the song the way you're thinking of it, right? So I'm thinking of this first section as C major. The second section, I'm thinking of it from the perspective of D major or something like that, so that you could still assign more complex songs that you're looking at from multiple perspectives. I think that should be doable in a sophisticated system these days. I mean, we have all the tools to be able to do that. So then we can take this information and plug it into like a DAW. So if you wanted to write things by just stacking notes, you could do so. But if you don't, you could do it this way and be able to go back and forth. So I am building here, going from this data input, then expanding it with the formula to the DAW to map out the concept. But you could go either way. If you can go one way, you could go the other in a database program. And then this will show the numbers, this will show the letters, and then this will show the Nashville numbers from a local perspective. Okay, so that then allows us to transfer this information to all 12 collections of 7 notes by just changing this dial. Here's my dial. I changed that to an 11. Now I'm in G. So now everything's from the perspective of G. Okay, that's great. Now the thing that's a little bit more difficult is to rotate from all the modal perspectives, because when I rotate from the modal perspectives, then I don't want to just say, hey, look, I'd like to see this information from the perspective of the related Dorian, if this is the Ionian, because all the notes will in essence be the same. I'm going to keep the same permanent numbering system for all the modal points. But what I'm talking about is then shifting the tonic. So if I wrote the tonic of the song, the thing that comes up the most is the Ionian, then I want to rotate the Ionian one Nashville number up to the Dorian. And then if I have a Dorian, I'm going to rotate that chord up to a Phrygian chord. If it's a Phrygian chord, I rotate it up to a Lydian chord, and so on. That means from a chordal standpoint, that's actually easier, because I can just replace the Ionian. It's a 3-note Ionian. I'm just going to say now it's a 3-note Dorian. Now that means that it doesn't have a major third but a minor third when I do the rotation. So it's going to kind of snap it into place from the chord's perspective. If you played a chord that was in key, I'm just going to shift it to the next chord up that will be in key, and all the relative notes in that chord will shift up accordingly. Then we have the notes, which are the Nashville numbers, which are actually a little bit more tricky, because I might have notes that are, of course, in the ocean. If we have a note in the ocean, what I call the five notes that aren't in the 7-note collection, which are represented by the 0.5s from a Nashville number system. If it's a 1.5, then I can change that. That'll rotate up to a 2.5. That will be fine because that's located there. If it's a 2.5, however, then that would be a 3.5. There is no 3.5 from a Nashville number or relative perspective. Therefore, I want to shift that up to a 4. And if I was on a 6.5, that would go to a 7.5 that I'd like to shift up to 8 or 1 in essence, because there's only 7 Nashville numbers. So the two problem points are when I have a 2.5 and a 7.5. The other problem point is when I'm at a 7, because then the shift would bring me to 8, and 8 would take me up to the octave above here. All right, so those are the issues we kind of left off with last time. So I'm rotating now, imagining that we're in the Ionian mode, C Ionian, and then I'm going to automatically shift it to the Dorian. So everything down below this is going to be all the modal perspectives from the Dorian. So 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 modal perspectives. So I'll just copy this down 7 times. So if I write it in Ionian, it's going to give me automatical shift of perspective rotating the tonic. All right, so that's going to give us the Dorian. So we left off last time doing that. We made a formula that allows us to do that. So now this chord up here was an Ionian chord, and now we flipped it to a Dorian. Everything looks like it's doing what we want. And then this was an Ionian up top, and we flipped it to a Dorian, which is represented by a 2 from a Nashville number system. And this up top was, what was this up top? This was a 1.5, and now it's a 2.5, so that looks good. Everything looks correct here. We have 2 4s. Why? Because the 2.5 got transferred to a 3.5 and then up to a 4, and the one that was a 3 also is a 4, right? So you see what kind of took place there, and then you've got the 5 and so on and so forth. Now the issue that we had was out here at the end, where we ended up with 2 1s, and I was saying there might be an issue with that. Why? Because I'm worried about the idea of, should this be an octave up? Now, notice that if I'm in the perspective of the Dorian and I'm using a Nashville number system, the 2 should actually be the lowest note in pitch in the local distance. In this case, the 2 represents a D if I'm looking at the related Dorian from the collection of notes of C major. So the related collection of notes for Dorian would be a D. So this would be D Dorian. It would start on a, so that means that the D should be the lowest note. Now, I'm not going to call the D a 1. That would be a scale degree kind of formatting. No, I'm going to keep it permanent as the 2. The problem, there's one issue with that though. That means that the 2 should be the lowest note in the 7-note collection. The 7-note collection plus the 5 other notes that are outside of the, or that are like in the ocean. So if I was a player of a DAW system and I'm playing in Dorian, that's what I would have to know, right? If I'm playing in Dorian, it's going to be the same numbers 1 through 7 that are in the key. But if I'm playing in Dorian, the 2 is the lowest number. And when I get to the 1, I'm actually going up in pitch, right? So I'm playing 1 through 7 notes. If I play a 0.5 note, I can reference another key on the keyboard to play the 0.5 notes possibly. And then, but the 2 is going to be the lowest note or the tonic if I'm playing in normal perspective. So that means this 1 is actually correct. I like the 1 here. I don't need to make that 1 an 8 to show that it's higher in pitch from an absolute standpoint than the 2, because this is the Dorian range where the 1, the local distance of the 1 is going to be higher in pitch. So but then when I pull it down here, see, when I pull it down here, it mapped out as a 60. And the 60, if I look at my range over here, is actually this C, the 60 is down here. So that becomes a problem. It has a 61. I don't know why it picked up, the 61 is picking up. But anyways, so what I need to have that be up here. So how can I fix that? So if I double click on this, let's just check it out. This is pulling from the range. It's looking at that 1. Where's it pulling though? It's pulling from this range up top. That range is the Ionian range. Notice I changed the local distance of the red bit. It's going from 60 to 71, C to B. I want it to be going down here, which I changed the range now. It should be going down here from 62 to 73. So here's the local distance, and here's the local number, which starts at a 2, and then it goes up to 1.5. So the 1 is fine. It's still going to be higher in pitch when I convert it. It's just that 1 shouldn't be showing a 60 here. It should be showing a 72. How to do that? So I'm going to double click on this. all I need to do is change this. I'm just going to pull this range down to the Dorian range down here of the local distance. Right there. And then I'm going to change this one once again to the local range down here. So now it should be finding this one and return the 72. So enter. So that looks good. Now I can copy this across and see if it is correct all the way across. So it didn't change anything else. So I think that looks correct now. So that looks okay. So now we're on the 62 over here. I still have this. So that fixed like this problem over here. I believe I had a problem over here, but it didn't fix this problem. That's 61 right there. Now what's the deal with that one? The problem with that one we touched on last time is that it's looking at this chord. I could have drawn it from here or here. I should probably adjust that. Let me see if I can adjust that. If I double click over here and I say, okay, what's in there? It's currently referring to this cell up top. I believe it should be referring to this one. So I'm going to pull all of them down. I can't quite see them. I'm going to do it one at a time. I'm going to pull them down to this middle bit so I can see it visually as I move all of these down. I know this is a little tedious to do it this way, but I think it's visually easy to see, at least, if tedious. And so we'll just copy all of those references down, and then I'm going to copy them all down here. Dut, dut, and then dut, and then jut, and then and then hopefully this is the last one. No, one more. Boom. Still another one. Okay. So then enter. Okay, so then let me copy this to all the rest of them. I'm going to copy this all the way, the formula, now that it's been adjusted to everything, and see what happens. Paste formulas only. And so there we have it. So now this bit looks correct. That wasn't there before. So now we're in the same spot. So now we still have this issue over here. Now the thing is that I would like to have, from a data input side, this one represent that it's going to be the same 7 numbers from a data input side, but this one is going to be higher in pitch if I'm looking at it from the perspective of the Dorian, because the Dorian is represented by Nashville number 2. So I'd like to be able to learn it, or have people learn the DAW saying, well, the 2 is going to be the lowest, but it goes around in a circle, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. 1 is going to be going up in pitch if you're playing from the perspective of the Dorian. But when I pull it over here, I want to use my absolute numbering system here to make it an 8. I think I can do that by just adjusting over here. If I go up top and say, when I look up these chords and I'm in the Dorian, I want this first chord to be represented starting on an 8 to be basically an octave higher from the Nashville number system. So what I'll do is I'll just copy this over. Let's test this out. I'm going to make another one of these. I'm going to copy this over to here and say right click and insert, and then maybe make these larger, and then I'll copy this bit. Let's get rid of this N. What is that doing here? Get out of here. Let's copy this bit, copy and paste it over here. Then I can delete the added column, right click and delete. Oh, that's not delete, that's the other of delete. This is gonna like delete, and then make this skinny over here. This is skinny going here, boom. Okay, so now all I'm gonna do is make this is gonna be equal this plus 7. So we make that an 8, and that changes this whole number. So now from the Dorian's perspective, I'm gonna color code this. This one is different because the Ionian needs to be higher in the octave from an absolute numbering system. So I changed it there. So let's see if that fixes my formulas. If I change the formula on this side, I want to make sure I'm down on the Dorian. I'm down in the Dorian. I'm going to change this formula, double click, and say right now it's referring to, and I can just use my visualization. It's referring to these. I want to pull all of them over here. So I'm just going to say pull these over here and use this one, which now has that adjusted top bit, and see what happens. Let's see what happens with that. And so we'll see. Is that right? Yeah. Okay. All right. And then let's copy that and paste it on the full DAW. Right click and paste formulas only. And did that solve the issue? It looks like it. There's nothing there. So I'll format paint that here. And so now we've got the 61 is up top. So that means, yeah, it should be this one up top. So that chord got shifted up top here. I think it did. So in other words, let's look at it here. Where's the Ionian? Here's an Ionian chord. So here's the Ionian chord. And that Ionian chord, whoa, holy moly. Where's that going? It's going to here. Did that help? That just drove me crazy right there. I don't know what happened with that. This 8 is the Ionian. So I think that's the Ionian chord that's being stacked, right? Boom, boom, boom. So this one right here, now this is in the way, is coming from that Ionian chord. And it's being stacked upwards from here because it's reading not the 1, but the 8. So that's cool. So now it looks like everything's going in the proper direction here, right? So we have this. I could still write it as a 1, but it's going to be represented as an 8 from an absolute numbering system. Now, if you were toying around in your DAW and your data input and you want to go up higher, I was trying to think, like if you wanted to go up the other octave from here, it would be going 2 through 1. So I guess the octave up from the Dorian would be 2 plus 7, a 9 from that perspective would be up 1. But in any case, you'd have to go up here to go an octave up would be the general idea. And then down here, that should map out. Okay, so that's pretty interesting. I think that works. So then down here, I can convert this then to the chords, but notice the chords keep getting messed up because I keep on adding columns, which are throwing these cells off because these are hard coded. So we might be best off to just copy this all the way down and do all 7 modal rotations and then go back and fix that just one time and then add and then fix this form, add this second bit to all of them. So that means I'm just going to leave this one blank for now. Okay. So then I could copy this formula up. I can copy this up to this column and it should work. Formulas only. That should give me the same data because it's doing the same thing from the up an octave. Same thing here, paste formulas. Same thing here, paste formulas. Same thing here, paste formulas. And then that's fine. Okay, so then if I go to the right, this looks correct. If I go to the right over here, now we have the letters starting at the Dorian, which I think are mapping out correctly. And then if I go to the right, here's the Nashville numbers from a local Nashville number perspective. I think that looks correct. So let's at least copy it down and see. The next thing we can do is the next mode, which will be the Phrygian. So let's copy from here all the way over. Here's as far down as it goes, 1, 1, 1. But no, I have to go down to here and then all the way across and see if this thing how nicely it copies it down. and keeps the same formatting. So I've got that whole thing. I copy this down. I'm going to copy it down here, one row down, so all the formulas hopefully will be in relative perspective. Boom. This is going to be Phrygian, which I'll probably misspell. Let's see if I can say equals a Phrygian up here somewhere, so I get all the misspellings correct. No, I don't have a Phrygian anywhere. Okay, whatever. I'll just misspell it. Phrygian. Phrygin, something like that. Phrygian. Okay. Dorian, Phrygian. Okay. And so then this is going to be equal to, for the Phrygian, let's go back to the first one, which is going to be equal to the, let me see this again. What did I do for the Dorian? I said this was a 6. So if it's so to get to the Phrygian is going to be the Phrygian is 2 modal half steps up from the Ionian, which would be a third. So that's going to be a major third. It's going to be 4 up. So I'll start on this 4 plus 4 half steps. So from a half step perspective, you would go up 4 half steps or like a major third to get there. So I don't care what we start on. If it was a C, great. If it was a 11 though, a G, then I'd go up 4 from there. That's going to take me outside to 15. I need it to be within a range of 12. So I'm going to double click on here and say if tab this plus this copy is less than 12, then comma do that, but if not, comma do that minus 12. And that'll keep us in the range of 12, and so that's going to be a 3. Okay, let's change this back to 4. And so I know the related Phrygian should be an E, so that's another double check if I'm in the 7 note collection of the key of C major. So let's go equals X lookup tab, find that 8, comma, find that 8 in the local distance over here of our notes here, comma, and return this, and that 8 should be an E. Boom. Okay, and then I'm going to double click on this, so when I copy it down, I'm going to F4 these, F4, so I won't have to do that again next time. And that should copy down automatically once I go from the Phrygian to the Lydian. Okay, so now this one is looking, oh wait, let's go up here. This one, where's that going? So it's pulling from the Dorian. Now the thing is, I'd rather not pull from the Dorian because I'd rather pull from the Ionian, because the Dorian has already been kind of adjusted, because remember we had to adjust these two in order to make it fit into the Dorian. So I don't want to keep on adjusting one at a time, but possibly go from the Ionian, right? And then so that'll be our starting point. So that means if I go from the Ionian, the chords, if I'm on an Ionian chord, if this was written in Ionian, and now I want to pivot from the modal perspective 2 modes up, which would be not 1 but 3, right now I'm on the Phrygian, then the Ionian would shift 2 up to the Phrygian, so I'll just make this a 3-note Phrygian, and this will shift up 2 from the Dorian to the Phrygian to the Lydian, right, and so on and so forth. And then the notes over here, these are the Nashville numbers. So now 1 would go to 2, 3. So that would be a 3. That's fine. But what if I'm in, and then the 2 would go to 2, 3, 4. And the 3 would go 3, 4, 5. 4 would go to 5, 6. 5 would go 6, 7. 6 would go 7, and then 8, but around the horn to 1. And then 7 would be going to 1, 2. But what about the ones in the ocean? So now I've got a 1.5 would be going to 2, 3.5. This is the problem one now, right? If it's a 1.5, then that's the one that's going to land me between 3 and 4. I can't do that. That's the one that's going to have to push up to a 4. And if I'm in between, what's the other one? A 5, 6, 7. A 5.5 is going to go to a 7.5. So that's the other one. So now the two problems are going to be this one to shift up and then this one to shift up. So you can see why I believe I will come up with a different collection of notes than if I said, let's shift this up to the Dorian and snap it into place, and then shift this up into the Phrygian. I'm not totally sure on that, but I'm pretty sure we'll come up with a different collection. And that means if you were going to put this into a DAW system, what you would like to be able to do is say, I would like to be able to write the song in any mode, any of the 7 modal perspectives, and then when you snap it or rotate or turn the dial, you're going to have to pull each of the adjustments from that nodal perspective for all 7 modal perspectives, right? So all 7 modal perspectives are pulling off of whatever the root one that you were in, so that you can rotate it around that way. I can't have a simpler system. Might be that I have all of these tying, like the Ionian is going to the Dorian and then the Dorian to the Phrygian, and then all I have to do is loop around from the Locrian to the Ionian. But I don't think that would be as good as basically saying, whatever mode you put it in, I'm going to have a system that builds all the other rotated modes off of that particular data input mode. And that way you will have less distortion, I believe, on the rotations. I'm almost positive it would not come out the same. We could test it out, but that's that. All right, so that means, so what do I want to do down here? Like, I'd like this Dorian, so this is coming from the Dorian. Now, maybe there's a way I could have made an absolute reference on the Dorian, so when I copied it down, it would have been easier. But now let's just fix it down here. So now I'm on the Phrygian. So this Phrygian, if I go up, then everything that's referencing this cell, I want it to be referencing up here on the Ionian. So I could just pull it up again. I think that's the visually nicest way to do it. So I'm just going to maybe try that. I'll pull it as far up as I can so that we can visually see it. Like, I'm just changing the formula by pulling this up to where I want it to go, but it's tedious to do this way. But I think it's easy to see this way. So we'll just pull all these up like that. I might have to do it 2 times or even 3 times. Maybe I can make the screen smaller. Yeah, I'd have to do it like, so let me try to make the screen smaller. No, I can't do it while I'm on it. And then I'll pull these up here. Pull these up here. And then jump. And then jump. And then jump. And then and then and then we'll pull them up again. Up to here. Almost there. Oh no. Now I messed up. Back down. I'm gonna go double click. Where was I? I was pulling up from here. Is that the one I want to be on? I want to be on one more up from there. So let's go as far up as we can here. Maybe this was not the most efficient way. I'm pretty sure. You think? You think this wasn't? No, okay. There's no need to. It's still visually pleasing to do it this way. I know exactly what is happening. Alright. Visually pleasing. There's time constraints. There are time constraints to consider here. It's not just the visual aesthetics that we need to worry about. For crying out loud. On the clock. We're on the clock, man. Alright. I get paid by the code length. I'm going to say, okay, let's copy this. So then that's good. So that gives us, so that's that. And then what else do I have to do in this formula? Well, it's saying if it's a 2.5, then I wanted to change it to a 4. That's not the problem now. Now the problem if it was a 3. Now the problem is if it's a 2.5, because that would be 2, 3, 4.5. So I need to change that to a 2.5. And then it says if it's a 7.5, make that a 1. That's not the problem anymore. If it's a 6.5, make it a 1. And then if it's that plus that is less than 8, then do it. But if it's not, you want to do that minus 7. That's still good, that bit. So I think that's it. We'll copy that across. Let's copy that across. See what happens. And so now, does this make any sense? So now we copied this across. Oh, wait a sec. This should be, so we started on the Ionian. This should convert to the Phrygian. So I think this bit might have worked. No, there's still a problem. Let's double click on this. And I said it doesn't need to be +1, but +2 now, because we're going 2 Nashville numbers up. So let's make that a 2. Let's make this a +2. Let's make this a +2. Let's make this a +2. Okay, so that should fix the numbers over here. So this was a 1, now it's a 3. This was a 2, 1.5, 3.5. This was a 3, now it's a 4. And then this one goes to 4.5, right? And then 5, 6, and then not going to 8, but to 1, and then 1, 7.5. Now we still have a 7.5. Okay, there's still problems here. Okay, I don't know why these didn't go down, because I would think that this rule right here would have said to bring them down. But I'm going to think about it a little bit more. So we have an issue with these 3 that we'll work on next time. And then I need to also rotate the chords. So if I double click on this, we have the chord that we need to find, which means we have to offset this by, so we have the offset thing that we're looking at, and we offset it now by 2. So that should be easy to do. I just changed that to a 2. Boom. And that now the chords are rotated. So that makes sense. Bam. So that's right, but these are still a problem. So I think the chords are right now, because this was an Ionian chord rotated up to a Phrygian chord, right? And this rotated up, boom, 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 boom. That looks good. But I would think that these would have been fixed, but no. And then I'm going to have to adjust this numbering system over here, which didn't pull over exactly correctly as well. So we'll have to deal with that. The key over here is that the center point now, from a letter standpoint, let's try it from a letter standpoint, should be this E. So we should have an E there now. And then from a number standpoint, it's going to be equal to X lookup, find that E, comma, where do we want to find it? We want to find it in the center spot of our MIDI system. So here's our MIDI table, absolute numbers in the middle range. So you want to find that in here. There's the E, comma, return this one, and then enter. So that is that, and then I can F4 that, so when I copy that down next time, it should pull over better. F4 on the ranges. Okay, so that's that, and now these numbers look correct. So then, and then this number, I think this number is still a problem. So this needs to be the, let's do this, equals x lookup tab, find that number here, comma, in the prior range where we did find that number in this absolute range, boom, and then comma, and then return, where am I, to return, find that number in this absolute range, and then give me the local range distance. So give me the local range distance for the Nashville number. All right, and then boom. Okay, and that's right, that's a 4. And this goes up from there, and this goes down from there. So let's copy this one here. Paste formulas. That should be a 3. So let's just copy that all the way down. It should be able to copy this all the way down. Paste. I think that should work. So, because this is giving me, these are giving me the absolute numbers. Yeah, that's a 4, 5s, and F. I think that's right. And then the Nashville numbers are going down from there. I don't know, my head is going right now. So let's check those out later, next time. So next time, we need to fix this problem. I need to look at the numbering over here. And then I have some stuff happening down here again. So I can see that that's an issue. And so we'll map that out next time. Save this.